And the very big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for our very own Mr. Scaramouche Jones. Who is the president of the audience for this conference in England. I'd like to thank you for joining us, and I wish you all a very happy New Year.
God, what a day! What a day, what a day, what a day. Good crowd, quite a good crowd, not bad for a swan song. Bloody parents these days, clucking round their kiddies, neurotic. That's what they are, too bloody neurotic by heart. They want to know what it's really like to... Oh, let the kiddies go. Fear and delight. Yeah, what's wrong with a bit of fear and delight? Wicked old clown come and steal away your kiddies, eh? Like the old pipers steal away too. Time to steal away. Time to be packing up, moving on. Bit tired. Rest here a bit first. Trouble worsens in East Timor. New evidence of more massacres unearthed. Timor is Latin noun, third declension feminine. Timoris, fear and delight. Not much delight, plenty of fear. Let's have a look at the crossword. Oh, that bloody juggler's been in here again, trespassing on me crossword, filling it in all wrong. You bloody charlatan. Oh, leave it alone. Let's see, what's this one? 7 across. 5 letters, 150 possessed comic performer. Our name is Legion, for we are many. 150. Well, that's not much of a house, is it, Madeira? Many barely fill up the front stalls, let alone the... Let's see. C is Latin too, is it? 150. C-L, possess, own, C-L-O, clone, clown. Yeah, might have bloody well known it. What? Comic performer? Tragic performer? I can see you know, as each minute ticks its inexorable way towards the witching hour, you become more palpable. My good ghosts of the past, present, future. And since you do me the inestimable courtesy of attending my imminent departure, allow me to introduce myself. Scaramouche Jones, Esquire, clown, Englishman, or so I have always maintained, but thereby hangs a tale. Tonight is the last night of my life. The 31st December, Anno Domini 1999, a veritable annus horribilis, the very arse end of the 20th century. Millennium Eve, as they say, and tonight as a million clocks strike midnight up and down this green and pleasant land, I shall lay down my long and weary life. And not before time. I was born at midnight, December 31st, 1899. As the death rattle of the 19th century gave way to the infant squalling of the 20th. And so tonight, as champagne bottles pop and ejaculate their foaming incontinence over the jaded revellers of merry England, I shall be precisely 100 years old. It is enough. Time to die. And as I contemplate my imminent departure, setting a tentative toe on the smooth, worn threshold of that last good night, I feel distinctly overdressed. Just as the virgin bride divests herself tremblingly of her silken layers of corsets and petticoats, knowing full well that no raiment will satisfy the bridegroom but the pale radiance of her nakedness, so too I sense a fluttering, reckless impulsion to strip, to bear myself, body and soul, to the ravening, nuptial embrace of that great mystery beyond the dawn of night, to bear myself. My self. Who can say? Indulge me by your attentiveness, my friends. Keep vigil with me through this, my final hour, the last gasp of the 20th century, the epilogue to my life, and be rewarded with the tale and the surrendering up of the 7 white masks of Scaramouche Jones. My first ivory veneer I acquired as a child. I'm pale even at birth, which surprises my mother, since she is a dark-skinned gypsy, a swarthy Ethiop. My little oyster, she used to croon of her. You were so pale and white when you popped out from inside me, just like a little shellfish. As I've told you, it is midnight, on the cusp between another 2 centuries, the hour of my popping out, my shelling, and the scene of my birth, a fishmonger's shop on a dingy wharfside in Port of Spain, Trinidad, as I squirm between my mother's legs, slippery with amniotic ooze, and slide onto the slab begrimed with fish scales and rank with the stench of gutted crabs. Naval guns boom out across the harbour, heralding the onset of a brand new century, and pounding out a fierce, warlike salute to the health and happiness of Queen Victoria far away. Elsewhere in the world, more sobering things are happening far beyond my infant ken. British ships are sailing down the Suez Canal. The ancient empires of Turkey and China are falling apart at the seams. The first Commonwealth of Australia is ratified, and the concentration camp is being invented courtesy of Lord Kitchener in South Africa. Queen Victoria, no doubt, sits mouldering in Balmoral, swathed in tartan blankets, enduring without amusement the barbarous wailing of bagpipes at Hogmanay. While I, for my part, wail lustily as fireworks crackle over the bay, and my mother's shady gypsy companions cut my pale umbilical cord with a fishmonger's knife. A New Year's Eve carnival is whooping through the streets of Port Australia, firebrands held aloft by frenzied voodoo dancers, festooned in feathers, black men with faces painted white. My mother, never one to miss out on the chance of revelry, swings herself off the makeshift birthing table and staggers out into the streets to see the lights, clutching me fiercely to her sweat-drenched bosom as I guzzle desperately, spilling the first yellow vintage of her milk in my greedy ineptitude. Imagine the whiz-bang of pyrotechnics, the hubbub of cavorting masquerade processions, and my fragile baby body, pale against her tawny skin, my tiny face white with the evidence suckling, flinching at the riot of the wild festivities, completely disregarded in my naked feebleness by those around me. But quite a rough landing, I'm sure you'll agree. A clown's nativity. I always knew you were born for something special, you oyster. My mother used to slur insistently when the dark rum of Trinidad had got the better of her. You were so pale and white when you popped off, just like a little shellfish, just like your father. My father? Who then was my father? Who can say? Our name is Legion, for we are many. Trinidad in those days is a passing through place for vessels blown by the trade winds from the far corners of the globe, a haven for merchants and traders in rum, rubber, tobacco, coffee, oil, and other things besides. And Port of Spain, a harbour city of seething, jostling slums, an exotic crucible for the mingling and commingling of the piss and pus of every conceivable strain of humanity the world had yet produced. Chinamen, Bavarians, Armenians, Samarkandians, Peruvians, Dutchmen, Portuguese, Indians of every caste, Negroes and half-Negroes and quarter Negroes, and of course, fair-skinned Englishmen on every street corner, on every lamp-lit quay, a grotesque and intriguing cavalcade of nationalities, haggling, gambling, drinking, dancing, fighting, telling tall stories, fantastical sea voyages to rival the fables of Marco Polo. And I was born like the infant saviour in a lowly hovel, a dingy stall, fishmonger's shop by day, knocking shop by night, where my mother, Melchiades, the gypsy whore, is proprietress, sole trading partner, and chief attraction. Who was my father? No other question vexes me more as I crouch night after night, hidden behind a gauze netting at the back of the shop, frozen with terror, watching my mother earn our keep. My tiny face was stiffened into a white mask of anger and confusion as I squint through the flickering lamplight and the perplexing tears that missed my sight to see her, mia mamma, flat on her back on the slab like a prize shark laid out for quartering, a bottle of rum in one hand and a billhook in the other, and between her dusky thighs some verminous Port of Spain pirate pumping away his burning discharge as her delicately arched insteps caress each other daintily above his busy buttocks. She shake her glorious, tumbling black hair hanging down behind her to the floor and laugh uproariously, madly, laugh after laugh, peeling up into the smoky rafters of the shop. And then she'd stick her billhook into the arse of any paying guest who's outstayed his welcome. And as each gentleman caller staggers off into the night, she sluice her mouth with a deep draught of rum, and not even shifting from the slab, whistle to the next in line to come and pay his respects. And so, my nights pass, and so, from behind the gauze netting, I watch my mother, a bottomless receptacle for the sloshing seamen of many nations, and I try to imagine each passing customer perhaps being my progenitor, source of the single seed that took root. And as the first white mask of my lonely calling begins to crystallize over my solemn little face, I wonder to myself, which of this legion of horny beasts might I be permitted to call Papa? My mother never tells me. It is my perennial pestering petition, bleated incessantly as I scamper around her through the bustling alleyways of the harbour market, or nestle in her lap as she carouses with her gypsy companions at the balmy, firelit evening gatherings on one of the countless cobblestone piazzas of the Portuguese quarter of downtown Port of Spain. Mia cara, mia mamma, me chiades mamma, dice dunque mia papa. And she'd toss her head, and the dark-eyed gypsies would cackle, causing me to flush beneath my pale hide. As someone calls out, Melchiades, tell the little white-faced Scaramouche where the gypsy come from. And she'd puff at her pipe and swill back some rum, and the story would begin. The line of the gypsy, little Scaramouche, is ancient and strong and never dies out, no matter how many times you water it down with the blood of lesser men. If you listen to the Christian preaching on the harbour front, the missionary will stand up on the soapbox and tell tale of Jesus the Jew. You will hear them read from their Bible about the beginning of all things. And in this book of Genesis, you can read that when the world was very young and the sky was new, the sons of God walked upon the earth amongst the children of men, and they took mortal women to be their bride, and their offspring were angelic beings whose veins scalded with the immortal ichor of the race of heaven. And there were giants in the earth in those days. Strange, often are these marriages of heaven and earth, the scattering and leaving of a higher kind, tossed hither and thither throughout the world. And these were the forefather to the gypsy. We are a people caught between two realms, always yearning for our angel sire in the sky, always wandering, searching the highways and byways of forgotten places for a half-remembered home. We speak the language of Babel. We marry or couple with due
Persia and Africa and India, not even with the white-faced men of England. And always, the child is a gypsy, no matter who the father. Gypsy is but mother and father to us all. Our name is Legion, for we are many. And you, little oyster, we little shellfish, you bear the name of the clown, Scaramouche, because you were so pale and white when you popped out. And for this, I love your little white face, my little baby clown, and your father. And here she would break off and call for a song or pitch me sprawling onto the cobbles as she holds up her skirts to dance and tell me laughing that the angels sail in the sky is a feather enough for any gypsy child. But once, just once, she concludes her tale with a catch in her voice, a strange ache in her features. I feel her heart quicken in her chest as I cling to her. She pronounces huskily, slowly, your father, little Scaramouche, was an Englishman. And that is almost the last thing I can tell you about my mother. As we returned home that evening to the fishmonger's shop, she to her trade on the slab, I to my straw pallet in the loft, I glow with a fervid delight. My father is an Englishman. I sleep as soundly and peacefully that night as only the son of an Englishman can. Secure in the divinely ordained knowledge that the world was made for him by an English God, and that nowhere in the world was there a door that would not open, an ear that would not hearken to that majestic incantation. He is an Englishman, civis Romanus sum. Shaken roughly awake the very next morning by Costas, the bleary-faced, half-caste fishmonger, rents the attic room to us, turns a blind eye to my mother's nocturnal trade on the slab. He's in a state of panic. Cork, on, get along with you. You must be leaving this place. I murmur, still half asleep. Yes, indeed, we must be going. We must be going down to the harbour front to meet my father. My father is an Englishman, you see, and he is coming in a big Elder Dempster ship all the way from the Tower of London to meet me down at the harbour front and take me home. Costas, visibly frightened, glares at me for an instant and then bundles me up in a rag of sacking and clatters on down through the shop and out onto the wharf side as he hustles me away. I remember noticing in a fleeting glimpse a dirty old pile of nets in one corner of the shop with something protruding from underneath one of the cork floats. A dusky, exquisitely proportioned woman's foot, tawny skinned on the upper side and paler underneath, where the delicate arch of the instep rises between the ball and the heel like that of an Indian dancer. Without warning, the wheezing Costas dumps me down at the near side end of a rickety wooden jetty where a small tug lies moored, lapping gently in the harbour swell. This is the mission boat from Barbados, not an Elder Dempster. And as Costas races towards it, a white man, dressed in black with a priest's collar, is climbing up the ladder onto the jetty. Hurried negotiations ensue between them, punctuated by frequent glances and gestures in my direction. Well, I, for my part, am transfixed by a screech of noisy gulls, gannets and skewers, fighting over a scrap of fish a few yards from where I sit wrapped in my sacks. They're pecking and barging at the silvery sliver of meat, their wicked white faces squawking with greed and impotent fury. And at one point I distinctly noticed a fragment of fish, a whiting perhaps, or a mackerel, something very bright and shiny in the dawn sun. I see it flop over of its own volition, and it dawns on me with devastating finality that although this wretched fish is still half alive, my mother is dead. Mama! Fling off the rags and sack up, sprinting back towards the warm side of the fishmonger's shop, but they catch me like an absconding piglet and carry me back, kicking and biting and sobbing to the mission boat, where I'm made to stand in an empty rum barrel, far too tall for me to climb out of. Your mother, she dead. Costas is courteous enough to inform me. So I'm in an accident with one of her friends. I know you must go with a very kind Reverend Father to the Half-an-Edge on Barbados, where there are plenty fine mission school, and the little boy eat mango all day long. I listen gravely from the depths of my barrel and wave a manful little goodbye over the rim to Costas, who has, it could be argued, done his best for me. And the mission boat begins to chug its way through the teeming harbour of Port of Spain and out onto the shimmering waters of the open sea. Perhaps my mother had laughed too loud and long in the face of her last customer, a murderer, snapping his tottering dignity with her scorn and had her head stoved in with her own rum bottle. Maybe she stuck a billhook too hard into the clenching white buttocks and he had wrested it from her and taken his revenge, who can say? But these are not the gruesome speculations preoccupying me on board the mission boat to Barbados. You may be relieved to learn merely the ponderings of hindsight. No. What is perplexing my infant mind now is why my majestic English father, so recently acquired, has done nothing to intervene. Perhaps he is even now following after me. Yes, that would be it. I make up a little prayer to the angel sires of the gypsies in the sky, beseeching them please to receive my mother with kindness and to hasten my noble English father's efforts on my behalf. The Reverend Father sells me at the next island stop to a hawk-nosed Arab slave trader from Mombasa who admires the pale translucence of my face and offers him 50 English shillings for the little white-faced gypsy monkey. The Reverend Father, relieved, I would guess, to be so lucratively rid of me, gives him the barrel into the bargain. A job lot. And so, as the barrel and I are winched from the mission boat to the deck of the sleek Arab bagla, I ponder, not without a tiny glow of pride, this swift and dramatic answer to my little prayers. Through the inherited virtue of my white face, which has such indisputable buying power, my noble English father has made provision for me, and the dangerous prospect of eating mangoes all day long in a mission school in Barbados has miraculously been averted. Instead, I am to sail the high seas under the tutelage of my new master, Ilderim, the blackbird slaver of Mombasa. This elated view of my circumstances lasts about an hour, until we lose sight of dry land, the surging, thundering waters of the vast Atlantic, stretching out to endless horizons of seas on all sides, completely overwhelm my already bewildered wits, and I languish in my barrel, eyes clenched shut like a frightened turtle for 3 days and 3 nights. An odd, pale luminescence leaking in through the warped timbers of the barrel, and a weird, watery rumour of sound stealing up on the windless night to intrigue my ears stir me from my torpor on the third night, prompting me to uncurl myself, standing upright to discover its source. The becalmed surface of the dark ocean is glinting beneath a shimmering swathe of moonlight, streaking a ghostly path between the curving worlds of water and sky. And where the light laps over the face of the deep, shining creatures are congregating, phosphorescent multitudes rising like souls summoned from the sightless underworld of the sea, a million rippling lanterns twinkling and glistening in the wake of the moon's radiance. And even in the midst of all my terror and despair, the beauty of it smites my heart. The moon, my mother had told me, is the Lady Isis, goddess of gypsy fortunes, and here on the vast rocking ocean, sailing to the very edge of the world, for all I know, it seems to me that in her white face there remains an echo, at least, of friendship in the desolate universe. Endless days, even longer nights, weaving and buffeting over the open seas, see the salty deposits of a second white mask begin to calcify over my wind-bitten features as the deep-sea dhow ploughs its endless course for the far distant coast of West Africa. I'm 6 years old, and in the span of a single day I've become orphan, slave, and exile. Far away in Ithaca, England, to give it its proper name, the world's first cinema is being built. In Lancashire, Keir Hardie is launching the Infant Labour Party, and Lord Kitchener is launching HMS Dreadnought. The year 1906. The blackbird straver sells me on at a profit of 10 shillings to a snake charmer in Senegal, a charming villain in every respect, a short, bow-legged, bizarre concoction of Arab, Negro, and Italian, with a grizzled beard, rascally gaps between his yellowing teeth, and a brown, jovial face as shriveled as a walnut. His name, he tells me, is Yasu Giovanni Battista Tassama, and I hail from Somalia. And you are now my slave, my apprentice, my son, and my most cherished possession, except, of course, for my beloved snake, which I love dearer than a brother. He shoves a piece of Senegalese sweetmeat into my astonished mouth, ties a silk halter around her neck, and swings me up onto his camel to ride pillion, explaining as he does so that he has bought me for the exceptional whiteness of my face, which is worth 100 rifle or dozen elephant tusks any day in this dark continent of Africa. And I will be damned to the bowels of Shaitan if I'm going to let anyone else have you. Allah Akbar. Somewhere up above the marble minarets of Dakar Citadel, an imam begins to intone the early morning call to prayer. Yasu curses and spits and launches, unbelievably, into a sonorous rendition of an aria from HMS Pinafore. A British star is a soaring soul, as free as a mountain bird. His energetic fist must be ready to resist a dictatorial word. I am inclined to snivel somewhat for the hectic strangeness of my new situation, and because the ache for my mother is too great to be borne inwardly all the time. But as we lollop off precariously through the waterside bazaars of Dakar, me clinging like a limpet to the flea-infested humps of Yasu's camel, I become entranced by the uproarious onslaught of sights, sounds, and smells, assailing my innocent senses on all sides. The stench of untanned leather, the mingled enticements of stewing goat, boiling toffee, and fresh mint tea, all belching forth steamily from charcoal-blackened cauldrons, the wafting perfumes and spices of the Ashanti merchants, the vile fetidness close at hand of the crushed crayfish which Yasu chews and spits continuously in between great greasy wads of black tobacco, 1,000 varieties of shit strewn in all directions from every conceivable type of livestock, and the cleansing sense of exotic fruits whose freshness and cheapness is extolled at bellowing pitch by the rival bazaar traders. Yasu leaves off singing for an instant to prod me with the butt end of his whip and chide me comfortingly. Do not fret, little whiteface. I have received a top-class English education from the Benjamin Disraeli Presbyterian Free School of Bereira in Somalia, and my mother's father was an Italian, so I have the soul of a white man. Which means nothing to me, of course, but as our acquaintance progresses and the days of my bonded servitude lengthen into weeks, months, and years, Yasu, the beguiling snake charmer, strives zealously to impart every half-remembered scrap of his English education to his little white-faced apprentice, as together we trawl the length and breadth of Northern Africa in our eccentric professional partnership, from Senegal to Somalia, from Egypt to the Cameroon, wherever we can attract an audience with our serpentine antics, from the flesh pots of Mogadishu to the flea pits of Khartoum. Give me your deponent and semi-deponent verbs of the third conjugation, he would bawl as we unpack our gear and set up pitch somewhere new. Irasko, Iraski, Iradusum. It is all so dizzily strange. Rambling kaleidoscope of people, places, precepts and prejudices, all of which I know nothing. The ablative absolute and the accusative infinitive, the Roman heresy of transubstantiation, the new LBW law in cricket, Trollope's superiority to Dickens, and Mrs. Beaton's recipe for drop scones. At times he grows almost apoplectic with impatience at my laborious attempts to keep up. Iraska! Ireski! Iradusum, little Scaramouche! I am angry. You are angry. We are all bloody angry. Though often exasperated, he beats me very infrequently. Then only for some clumsiness or discourtesy, real or imagined, to his beloved snake. Said snake, chief asset of our livelihood, is a magnificent white cobra, nicknamed Benjamin Disraeli. Yasu had pinched him many years previously from the shrine of an eccentric Kabbalistic cult in Abyssinia who worshipped the goddess Isis. He's extraordinarily docile, subsists entirely on goat's milk. Had his poison sacs removed long ago, though his fangs could still inflict a nasty flesh wound if alarmed or angered, which is rare. Now, my job, when we stake our pitch in a public place, was to carry out the elaborate rigmarole preceding the actual snake charming to generate an appropriately mystical build-up to the performance itself. So, while I sprinkle glittering dust in magic circles around Benjamin Disraeli's wicker basket, Yasu would mutter incantations over his magic flute, a nasty old cracked oboe from his mission school days, held together with strips of camel hide and sticking plaster. Next comes the preparation and daubing of the gamamungu, a viscous, pale paste made from mixing white clay with goat's milk, which we plaster all over our faces as a ceremonial protection against evil spirits. Then, the conjuring of the serpent itself. While I prostrate myself in the dust before Benjamin Disraeli's wicker basket, Yasu would sit cross-legged at my feet and begin to coax the most extraordinary sounds imaginable from his trusty instrument. Yasu's playing is gloriously, beguilingly weird. Musical rules to Yasu, like any other rules, merely a creative basis for improvisation. And so he begins in the more or less orthodox fashion, meandering up and down the traditional Arabic maqams, but before long he'd tire of this and start to add in the most startling elements. Having given, for example, a very passable and quite sacrilegious imitation of the Islamic call to prayer, he would weave his way down from on high in a chromatic cascade of semitones, quarter notes, eighths and sixteenths of a tone, and then launch into an audacious medley of tunes from the Mikado or the Gondoliers, interspersed with ragtime and mission school hymns. And every time, without fail, Benjamin Disraeli, excited by the smell of the goat's milk in the Gamanungu and inured by habit to recognise the warbling of the oboe as a guaranteed preliminary to a good feed, would nose his way sleepily out of the basket to drink in the intoxicating serenade, waving pale and taut in the dusty African air like a conductor's baton, an expression of mild bemusement on his scaly white face. And thus, we live and travel together for nearly 25 years, while I grow to manhood or something like it. Yasu grows elderly and decrepit, and Benjamin Disraeli sloughs his skin 6 times and outgrows 5 successive wicker baskets. And from the many layered coatings of the Gamanungu and the pale, blowing sand of the Sahara, a 3rd white mask fuses gently and irrevocably over my features as they lengthen to maturity. We hear occasional rumours, of course, of events far off, of the exploits of a white man called Orense, who has united the disparate tribes of Arabia and is driving the Turks out of their crumbling colonies in the Near East. And we hear wide-eyed tidings of a terrible war in far-off northern realms where the young men of Europe fall like chaff before the machine guns of Ypres and Passchendaele. But Yasu is dismissive. England will always win through in the end. And I accept his pronouncements meekly. Yasu, Giovanni Battista, Tasama. Nothing short of surgical amputation could have separated me from Yasu. As you will see, we are arrested in the great cathedral piazza of Addis Ababa in the winter of 1930 for causing a criminal and blasphemous public disturbance at the coronation of His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie I, the Lion of Judah. It is, of course, the greatest happening of this century on the African continent, and like so many other itinerant roads for thousands of miles around, Yasu has been drawn irresistibly to the ancient capital to see what commercial picky such a magnificent celebration might afford. Having bribed the sentries on duty to turn a blind eye, Yasu has brazenly set up shop opposite the mighty west gate of the Cathedral of St. George itself, a perfect pitch so that when the first of the many visiting foreign dignitaries begin their slow, stately procession into the piazza, we begin our customary snake-charming charade. But Benjamin Disraeli, having not been fed for over a week, since Yasu is determined he should be on top form, is decidedly frisky and ravenous. At the first sniff of the gamanungu, he darts upwards out of his basket and hangs, quivering and splendid, 7 feet in the air for one precipitous moment. And then the whole thing overbalances, snake, basket and all, and crashes to the floor to an accompanying volley of hair-raising obscenities from Yasu. He slithers at alarming speed across the flagstones of the cathedral piazza, heading straight for the ankles of Rear Admiral Prince Udine of Italy, who is about to enter the cathedral. Weaving his way with startling dexterity through the panic-stricken melee of booted feet and jingling spurs, Benjamin Disraeli surges on undaunted and bursts into the westward end of the great nave. A hail of ceremonial spears and halberds clatters onto the antique mosaics of the cathedral floor as the intrepid reptile barges its way to the head of the procession and careers on up the main aisle amid a furore of frightened diplomats and outraged acolytes, with Yasu and me chasing after him, fighting our way through the fleeing crowds and yelling imprecations of "Snake! Snake!" We are swiftly apprehended by Italian guards of honor and dragged ignominiously away from the apocalyptic scene. Benjamin Disraeli is never seen again. Yasu is hanged, and I'm slung into a dungeon to await sentencing pending the conclusion of the lengthy coronation festivities. Incredibly, my rescue comes at the hands of the Italian Rear Admiral himself, Prince Udine of Italy, who feels it is a shame that such an innocent young white man should suffer the same fate as his villainous master when, certamente, he had been led astray. Clearly, he's been impressed, even in this brief farcical moment, with the exceptional whiteness of my face. And so I depart Africa in the retinue of an Italian prince. We take ship for Djibouti and sail from the Gulf of Aden to Suez and thence to the great Mediterranean, of which Yasu has taught me so much via the pens of Homer and Virgil. All the way to the Adriatic, Prince Udine woos me with chocolates, glazed fruits, and exotic European toys, the like of which I've never seen. I'm at a loss to comprehend these extravagant kindnesses until one sultry night, in the wee small hours, I am awoke by the rasping warble of his bejeweled gramophone, playing his favourite chanson d'amour, O mio babino caro, and I watch with horrified fascination through slitted eyelids as he cavorts grotesquely about my cabin, clad only in a silk kimono which entirely fails to conceal his advanced state of tumescence. In a quavering tenor voice, he is singing along with the aria, swaying and drifting with surprising agility across my cabin floor, one elegant pale hand held aloft, invoking and sustaining his incantation, the other rising and falling with the crackling cadences of the coloratur's voice, firmly attached to his engorged member, until the propitious moment arrives when she hits her top C. judging by the ensuing groans and sighs of relief, he hits his. This ominous little ritual grows more frequent and more urgent as his frustrated longing for me swelters unfulfilled until we come at last to Venice. He has been commanded to attend a Christmas mass ball in that great city, he tells me, in the presence of Mussolini himself. The name means nothing to me, and it is his cherished wish that I should wait upon him at the banquet as his manservant. All very well, and kindly meant, no doubt, but I can tell from his feverish demeanour what the last dance of the evening will be. A Venetian dance, certamente, the beast with two backs, or one back in our case. Therein lay the problem. The full moon is glimmering in the icy water, and Christmas Eve fireworks sparkling in the winter sky over the Doge's palace as our vessel draws into the city's majestic harbour. Lowering myself silently overboard with that same silk halter which Yasu had placed around my neck so many years before, I take one long, last, deep breath and plunge into the icy water. Oh God, will I freeze to death? I'm sinking, breathless to the bottom. Try to force my limbs into motion, but they're frozen stiff. Somehow, God alone knows how, I managed to splash and splutter my way to the quayside, where I lie, more dead than alive, quivering with great convulsions of cold, and glaring up at the laughing, livid face of the mocking moon as she cocks a coquettish eyebrow at me. And as the life ebbs from me, and the bells of St. Mark's begin to chime the midnight carolings of Christmas Day, it seems to me I hear the voice of my mother, laughing huskily and singing in her mannish drawl. And although almost all sensation has departed, I feel two warm tears ooze unexpectedly from my stinging eyes, rolling down the trembling surface of my white face, freezing before they reach my chin. I hear the rasp of gypsy voices. Arms are laid on me, dragging me to my feet. A crowd of dark-eyed gypsies all around me, swaddling in their coats, a flask of rum thrust between my stuttering lips. I have been singing as I lay down there, in a Romany dialect, singing back to my mother and the sky. And these carousing gypsies passing by have heard me and rushed to rescue one of their own kind, a far-flung cousin crooning feebly in their language as hypothermia took hold. They take me to their fold like a long-lost brother, clad me, revive me, shelter me in the smoky, greasy warmth of a horse-drawn, clinker-built caravan, saucepans hanging from the ceiling above its folding bunk beds. It's parked up in a dark, dank catacomb, roofed over with curving, moss-strewn Roman tiles, and as half-heard strains of Mozart drift across from the nearby Fenice Opera House, I float away in a sweet delirium and sleep as soundly and peacefully that night as only the son of a gypsy can. But the icy sheen of cold frozen over my face that night, streaked with two frosted tears, has never been lifted, and so it became the fourth white mask of my strange destiny. My time amongst the gypsies is dreamlike, haunting all of their life, a seamless, roving journey without beginning or end. When I fall in with them, they're heading for Milan. And there, several months later, we meet up with 3 or 4 other branches of their illustrious clan, more by telepathy than prearrangement. Wagons and caravans are parked up on a spot of derelict wasteland, picketed off for a construction site, congregated around a gigantic marble foot, which rears up unaccountably out of the weeds and rubble, toes thrusting northwards, bristling between sandal thongs with an assertively masculine air of conquest like those of a latter-day Julius Caesar. 9 feet above the ground, the edifice comes to an abrupt halt, amputated halfway up the magnificently muscled calf, the point at which money and materials have evidently run out for this latest and most ludicrous of Mussolini's self-portraits. Ecco il nostro duce, exalts the deep-cut imperial lettering on the imposing plinth, beneath which a gypsy hand has scrawled the alternative caption, Benito's big toes. This noisome eminence has one useful function at least, in that each marble toe affords a convenient point of anchorage for the gypsy's washing lines, which fan out in all directions like the guy ropes of the Lilliputians. The final stamp of ridicule, you might say. Carabinieri patrol the perimeter of the site, would seem unperturbed by the arrival of the gypsy wagon. Clearly, someone has been paid off. A straggling muster begins, a kind of gypsy parliament, of which there appears to be one preeminent resolve. They are all going to Poland. Someone has come up mystifyingly with the notion they must all go to Krakow and sell shoes. And this has met with universal assent. But this is overshadowed on the 3rd day of the Parliament by a grey-haired elder with one eye who stands up in the midst of the throng, flouting gypsy protocol. My name is Jelko, and my sister's daughter is disappeared, he wails, tears in his one good eye. My little Dibla. Oh, we're searching everywhere for her. Now we're getting the news she can't have any take her. Lock her up into the prison. They say she is a whore and must be punished for spreading disease and wickedness. I say non è vero. I never pimp for my own child. Now, why it is that I volunteer to make one last effort on little Dibbler's behalf, who can say? Perhaps an effort to repay their kindness. Maybe I do not like to think of her being so cruelly sundered from her kin as I have been. But above all, I believe, I am inspired by the sudden conviction that my intervention would be precisely what Yasuta Sama would have expected of me. The act of an English gentleman. I say, my suggestion is met with rapturous admiration. Yes, of course, the gentlemanly Scaramouche with his funny white face and his stiff foreign way of speaking. Yes, they will think he is an English professor or a German count. Yes, it will work. And so I find myself propelled towards the central police station in Milan, raffishly attired in one of the loud pinstripe suits the gypsy males habitually sport, my pockets stuffed with lira for the bartering. I explained to the desk sergeant, in a miserably bastardized mixture of Italian and Latin, that I have come for the little gypsy girl, Dibla, to take her away to a orphanage
where she will receive a top-class English education and learn to be a gentleman.
Woman, I dump a handful of lira on the desk to strengthen my petition. The desk sergeant leers at me incredulously, motions to two lounging carabinieri. Take this white-faced freak down to the stairs and teach him a lesson. What follows, you may imagine. I'm stripped of my finery and beaten senseless with rifle butts and knuckle dusters. As I strive with departing consciousness to comprehend the fury of their violence, I hear them counting the money they found in my pockets. I awake sometime later to a worm's eye view of feet. Booted feet, the bare, dusky feet of a young girl. Feet encased in patent leather. Cigar smoke hangs in the air. A man's voice, more refined than the desk sergeant's, is speaking. See what this valiant clown has endured for your sake, little gypsy whore. Are you well? Some ash drops to the floor. Such valor should not go unrewarded. What will you give him to show him your gratitude? What about this? Something bright and shiny is flung down to the floor in front of my face, where it spins and rattles in a golden blur for a few seconds before settling to a standstill. An earring, ornate with Romany carving, smeared with blood, single dark hair trapped in its clasp. A gold ring. It prompts me dizzily to murmur through bleeding lips, "I'll marry her." What did he say? I want to marry her. Santa Maria, a match made in heaven, the white-faced freak and the little gypsy whore. And you will protect her, provide for her, keep her delicious little pox-ridden cunt off the street, yeah? Yes, I want to marry her. Bravo, maestro. Luigi, mio manuale di Costituzione. The appropriate magistrate's book is fetched. The two carabinieri constables who've beaten me to a pulp are sworn in as witnesses, and the Milanese Capitano reads the civil marriage ceremony over us, at the point at which I'm required to give my assent to the vows. I've still not laid eyes on my bride above her ankles. And so, leaning heavily on the strong, slender arms and shoulders of my new wife, who turns out on inspection to be as delightful a 12-year-old as anyone could wish for, we return in triumph to our people amid great rejoicing, although they're shocked to see that my face has become even more pallid and ghostly than before, if that were possible. Oh yes, indeed, a little wonder, for as I limp back to the gypsy caravanserai, faint with weakness, almost anemic with loss of blood, another veneer had settled snugly over my bruised and swollen features. It is my wedding day, after all, in the land of the Commedia dell'arte. So the love-lorn visage of the Piero becomes me well, smudged artfully in each cheek with the merest hint of a rising blush. My child bride, Dibbler, treats my wounds with magical poultices prepared by her grandmother, while her uncle Yerko spins fabulous yarns about our glorious future in the shoe trade in Krakow, as our convoy lumbers its way over the northern neck of the Balkans. And on certain nights, at least on one night, perhaps it was every night, little Dibbler would come to the makeshift bunk where I lie convalescing, discreetly hang a blanket across the wagon as a partition, and stand naked before me, neither fearing nor desiring the consummation of our marriage, as it seems to me, merely expecting it. And I gaze quizzically into these dark, defiant eyes, cast my glance over the slender, hairless body, hands and feet still disproportionately large, the tiny, incipient breasts just beginning to point to either side, and I reach out and pat her on the head, wave her away, or drape a garment across her shoulders, chiding her not to catch cold. By the time we arrive in Krakow, our grandmother, her uncle Yerko, and all the rest of the clan work themselves into such a pitch of shame and fury at my refusal to lie with my child bride. They pitch me out of the wagon in a deserted market square, batter me into unconsciousness, and leave me for dead. And so my brief marriage ends as it began, on the floor, covered in blood. I'm picked up off the shit-strewn sawdust of the market square by a kindly, grey-faced young actor returning home from the Teatro Stari. He hoists me onto his shoulders and plods off towards a nearby Catholic monastery where he has his lodgings, plying me with questions in Polish which I can make nothing of. In my delirium, I begin reciting the scraps of Horace and Virgil, echoing in my fevered brain, and despite his grunting exertion beneath my weight, the actor laughs grimly and replies in exquisitely tooled Latin hexameters that at this moment he feels rather like Aeneas escaping the sack of Troy, bearing his old father Anchises on his back. He lodges me with the Catholic brothers who in their dour, humorous way christen me Snowface. Though your sins be as scarlet, yet shall they be as white as snow. And there I remain, housed within the bare white walls of the monastery, lulled by the rhythm of the tolling bells and the daily offices, hibernating, you could say. For beyond that sanctuary's boundaries, all is winter. People queue for bread with suitcases full of paper money. Flames rise in the Reichstag in Berlin, and a half-wit is blamed. A diminutive holy man in a cotton loincloth challenges the might of the British Raj. Artists and intellectuals are streaming into Catalonia, Italians marching into Abyssinia, Germans into the Rhineland. While I attend matins and vespers, perform diligently the domestic chores allotted me, and read and reread a yellowing, flaking 18th century text of the Vulgate, the Latin Bible, which the monks have lent me, half out of pity, half out of amusement. I've been hit on the head too many times, you see, And like a stunned fledgling fallen from the nest, all that my disordered wits can manage is to drag myself into the dark protective hollow of a tall tree, there to peep out at the passing world. Not that I'm the only piece of flotsam washed thither, no. As the decade winds its inevitable way towards disaster, many more fugitives follow. I remember Hungarian communist with no fingernails, on the run from German spies. A liberal broadcaster from Leipzig. She'd fallen foul of the Gestapo, returned home one day to find her house burnt down, her family disappeared. An Austrian rabbi who'd been forced to clean toilets with his beard in a prison in Salzburg after the Kristallnacht. He'd come to dwell in the temple of the Goyim to make his own utter humiliation complete. Our monastery in Krakow was becoming a dangerous secret haven for countless strange refugees swept there like shattered fragments of driftwood on the scum tide of the 1930s. The day that Poland falls, I escaped Krakow, and the fury of the blitzkrieg by a matter of hours, fleeing southwards across the Tatra Mountains, disguised as a monk with no clear intent but to depart these troubled northern realms forever. I walk, I hitch, clamber up the back of buses and trains, speaking Latin to anyone who speaks to me. Dominus vobiscum in nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. And hiding my snow-white face under my cowl for fear it should excite comment. I reach the Adriatic coast, finally, in Croatia, where I am prevented from boarding a ship bound for Egypt by Ustashi soldiers, unmasked as some sort of imposter, and slung into the back of a military station wagon, crammed inside with men, women, and children who all bear on their garments a beautiful yellow star.
Go to sentimental journey. Go to send my friends. Go to take the sentimental journey to be open.
The Nazi doctors can find nothing in their books of eugenic anthropology to account for the pristine whiteness of my face. But neither are they prepared to believe that I'm a thoroughbred alien. So they keep me alive as a curiosity that will bear further looking at and give me a job as a gravedigger in their concentration camp at Split. My role in the final solution, when it began in earnest, was to dig mass graves, even in bitterest winter when the shovel bent in the frozen earth, and then stand by and watch as trailer loads of bodies are upended into them. Sometimes, presumably for the sake of variation, huge droves of living victims are herded to the edges of the pits and then machine gunned into the ground. wherever the corpses arrive, whether by gas, bullet, or malnutrition. My job is then to shovel white lime over the contorted limbs and twisted faces, like the painting of so many clowns. So many clowns, Jewish clowns, gypsy clowns, homosexual clowns, all with white lime to cover their faces. Sting and burn horribly if you got it on your hands while you're shoveling it out of the sacks into the pits. My 6th white mask is entirely composed of lime, the pain of which has never left me. An extraordinary thing happens. I develop a certain facility for making children laugh. As these ranks upon ranks of frightened, worn-down people are herded up for the machine gun squads, naked and shorn, one by one, the children begin to catch sight of me with my funny white face, leaning on my shovel, waiting to resume my work. And I wink at them, pull faces, laugh hugely without a sound, cavorting, making fun of the guards behind their backs, and acting out a silent pantomime of the execution that was about to take place, pretending to be a victim, gunned down, falling down into the pit, having my face painted white with lime, and then rising, fluttering on angels' wings, up into heaven. Get caught fooling around like this plenty of times, and my punishments are far from pleasant, but it seems to me a price worth paying to see these haunted little faces fixed on mine as they wait for the end. And sometimes, just sometimes, one of them will almost break into a laugh before the bullets rip into them and they topple down, 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 and beyond the reach of pain or fear, forevermore. And so the common euphemism for extermination in our camp becomes not going for a haircut or going to the showers, but going to see the clown. This honing of my training lasts until the Allied invasion of Italy, the triumph of Tito's partisans in the Balkans, when the Germans flee, leaving me, the sole proprietor in our particular establishment, standing at the edge of the last empty pit I've just dug for the last batch of surviving prisoners, who are, as it turns out, saved by the bell. I'm locked up, not surprisingly, for complicity in war crimes. And there, in Spandau prison, I moulder, enduring the worst torments of boredom imaginable, the interminable self-justifying raving and poisonous rhetoric of my fellow prisoners. They talk about bringing back the death penalty these days. I've got a much better idea. You take your condemned man, stick him in a cell with an old Nazi for 17 hours a day. You wish he bloody well had been hanged. My reprieve comes in 1951, when my case, among others, is re-examined in the light of some of the stories the survivors of the camps are beginning to tell for the very first time. An avuncular English judge, the Hon. Justice Percy Rawlins, informs me that he has become intrigued by a particular clutch of testimonies regarding the white-faced gravedigger of the camp at Split. Are you really the concentration camp clown whose antics kept fear at bay for so many Holocaust victims? Yes, I matter. I tried to make some of the little ones laugh before. He's flabbergasted. How? How did you do it? So, standing in the dock at Nuremberg, I performed for him my mime of the comic execution. It would seem that, in your own way, you have been of some service to humanity. You've been wrongfully imprisoned, shall receive your liberty forthwith. You shall receive a compensation of £100, and you are free to go whithersoever you will within His Majesty's realms. A great hope flares in my breast, and the evergreen profile of my noble English father takes shape once more in my mind as I confess my ambition blushingly to the kindly Welsh customs clerk detailed to sort out my papers. To England, is it, boy? Yes, please, sir, to England, if I may be allowed, for you see, my father is an Englishman. Oh, yes, very good. Name? Scaramouche, sir. I beg your pardon, my lad. Scaramouche, sir. S-C... Now, that's no sort of name to go putting down on a passport, boy. You got to have a surname, you want to have a passport, see? You got to have a passport, you want to go to England. You got a family name or what? My name is Legion, for we are many. Now we got to put something down here, boy. Now, what sort of a surname might you fancy, my lad? Could I have Churchill? Well, you can have Mickey Mouse or Montgomery for all I bloody care, but it's hardly the sort of surname I'd recommend. Winston Churchill, is it? The great wartime Prime Minister? Oh, yes, very good, yes. The English Home Secretary who sent in British troops against the striking miners in the Rhondda back in 26. Oh, yes, very good. I have no idea what he's talking about. Well, sir, what is your name? My name? Jones, boy, plain, simple, bloody Jones. Is that an English name? Oh, yes, as English as they come, yeah. You ask Mr. Churchill when you go to England, he'll tell you. Very well, sir. Let it be Jones, Scaramouche Jones, Esquire. Very good. Given a passport, new suit of clothes, £100 in my pocket, and a ticket by rail and ferry all the way to England. Who could ever forget the first sight of the white cliffs of Dover? I'm 51 years old. It's 1951. The Festival of Britain is in full swing. The new festival hall glistening on the South Bank's flags, fluttering in the breeze, as I wander in a daze from Waterloo Station to gaze on the sights of the mighty river, the Isis, the Englishman's father, Tiber, the magnificent Thames. Where should I start? Across the water, Big Ben is chiming midday, his white face twinkling in the slanting sunlight that sparkles off the river. I breathe deeply, turn towards the steps up onto Waterloo Bridge. Hey, mister, wait a moment. An accent of transfixing familiarity I've not heard for nearly 50 years. A black man on crutches, his face grinning broadly, is lurching towards me, an old army greatcoat slung across his shoulders. Can you spare a few shillings for a British veteran fallen on hard times, boss? I'm speechless. My first encounter on English soil, a Trinidadian beggar. I leaf through my brand new passport there, inside the cover of a 20 crisp £5 notes. I give him one. Hey, boys, come see, take a look here. See what this gentleman with the white face do. Come along, boss. Come and have a drink with these boys. You just arrived in London. Where are you from? Trinidad! The same as me. How is Port of Spain looking these days? Well, what do you mean you don't know? Well, when did you leave? 1906. What? Me think you must have come the long way round. And there, beneath the rattling arches of Waterloo Bridge, I squat down and drink strong whiskey from a bottle sheathed in a brown paper bag amongst beggars and invalids from the four corners of the globe. And the dark rippling water of the Thames flows by on its long journey to the sea, where it will mingle and commingle with the waters of the great oceans of the world and flow on to Senegal and Trinidad and the ends of the earth. And I pass the whiskey and tell the tale of my life until night falls, and they listen, gazing on the dark river and on my white face glimmering in the twilight. And they begin to laugh. They laugh like children, untainted by grief. They cackle and shake in an abandoned ecstasy of merriment. And I laugh with them. I laugh. At 51 years of age, for the very first time in my life, I know.
We weep with laughter. The girders above us ring with the hoarse, half-demented laughter of we discarded sons of England. And as if by some strange alchemy, the accumulated accretions of whiteness bleached and blanched into my skin are catalyzed and cauterized by the stinging tears of mirth coursing down my cheeks, hissing and fizzing, reactivating the lime and the frosted tears, and the Gamanungu and the Saharan sand, and the sea salt of the Atlantic, causing my face to burn in the white heat of the refiner's fire. And in that moment, still giggling and wincing, I know myself to be ultimately, irredeemably ridiculous. Diagnosing and prescribing with instinctive clarity the healing balm that alone can bring relief, I hurry across the bridge towards Covent Garden, where I purchase a pot of Leishner face paint, and over its 6 predecessors daub my 7th and final white mask. A magical poultice, a soothing salve to be applied and reapplied like a dressing, night after night, year after year, in the dressing room. Of a clown. And I paint my smile indelibly into the white scarred tissues of my face like a wound. All that remains is to stitch the aperture with sutures strong enough to withstand the rigors of another 50 years of buffoonery. Casting about for a suitable ligature, the thread of my life proves admirably handy, and in a matter of moments, my lips, along with my face, are sealed. And from that day forth, and for the next 50 years, I never opened my mouth again. So now you know. "50 years to make the clown. 50 years to play
the clown. And now, as with ludicrous clown feet prepare to skip trippingly over the smooth, worn threshold of that last good night, as I bear myself, body and soul, to the ravening nuptial embrace of that great mystery beyond the door of night, I feel as light as the dawn sun in Trinidad coming up over the ocean, as naked as little Dilma on our unconsummated wedding night, as strong as Benjamin Disraeli after slapping his lady's skin, and as old Yasu would be if he were here now, I feel unmasked at last, and I dare say almost free. In a few minutes' time, Big Ben will be chiming midnight and fireworks will be sparkling over the water, just as they did when I was born. Do you remember, Mother? Mia Mama, Melchiade.